Okay, so for those of you who are following along, I promised that I would be touching on one more topic when it comes to sharing the bigger picture of the premises that I've been working with to get to where I am and why I formulated um, the method that I did for healing. So, this topic is like so vast and expansive that like it feels a little bit intimidating to step into and share with you. And with that said, I want to say that, what you do with this knowledge is yours, and it is your responsibility. And there are things that I had to learn along the way about this. And one thing that I learned is if we're going to do this type stuff, it really, really matters about the resources we have to do it with. And when I say resources, I mean the resources that the physical body needs in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Meaning, like feeding yourself good nutrients, getting the rest you need, making enough room within your consciousness in order to take the information in, enough water, enough sunlight, enough grounding. Um, if you're always on your electronic devices and you've never done any grounding and spent time in nature, like your body might not have the capacity that it would need, and you could actually tax yourself past your limits with something like this. And that's just kind of what I want to say about it, because not that I think it's dangerous or anything, I just think it's up to us to be responsible with it. And not only in the way that we use it for ourselves, but if we were to try to attempt to use it for someone else, there's a whole another can of worms on what needs to be taken into consideration to still be considered responsible. So I think that for me to delve into this subject, I've been very guided. I've had what was called the council before I gained so much integration with my highest self, with versions of my higher self and eventually my highest self. I also had a council, and I can consult angels, guides, God along the way. And I think that because I've been doing that, I was sort of experimenting with this in a way that was safe. But I was still allowed to be shown why it's important to be responsible with this information. So I just want to say that at first. But the way I'm going to share this is just through my own personal experience, my stories about what I've learned is possible, and I also pulled some cards. I haven't looked at them yet, but I pulled some cards asking God to tell me about anything I think that would be worthy of mention once we're on this topic. Okay. So, quantum healing, energy healing. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you found your way here because you're researching it. And I think that's important and good, to find out what you can and to experiment and to know, what are the benefits and what are the detriments to doing something like this, because it's going to be individualized for each person as well, and what your capacity is to do it, and how effective you would be as well, I think. And I don't think it's because not everyone can do it. I think everyone can do it. But I think that some people would be more limited by their beliefs or, their confidence and their ability to do it and things like that. So, let there be light. And there was light. So what happened for me was During the time in my life when I was getting really in touch with God, doing a lot of fasting, meditating a lot, being in touch with Earth, which practically was because I was literally isolated in a place that was far away from everybody, didn't have people in my life that I could count on, and didn't even have a transportation to go to the grocery store. So fasting was just like a thing I had to do. Anyways, I'm glad though. I'm really glad for that experience because I did get so close to God, and I did understand like the real clarity that comes with not fogging up your brain with the chemicals and stuff that's in processed food that, you know, it's so readily available when you do have transportation and a sweet tooth. So I was really in that state where I was being shown step by step information, guidance. I would be given words, feelings, impressions, visions. And I was being taught that way in my journey. And so I became, out of curiosity, I became attuned to Reiki. So Reiki is more commonly understood and known as energy medicine, but Reiki is dealing on a 3D level, on a human body level. It's, I guess you couldn't say 3D, it would be 4D, but it would be that the Reiki is focused on healing of the body, regulating the body. And I became attuned to it through the internet, which some people say you can't do, but I did do. And then I didn't use it much because I just didn't feel like it was my thing. And that was pretty common for me at that time, to try on a tool, experiment with it, even find it was successful and worked. Like, it did work for me. I did long distance healing sessions for people. They reported back, you know, that they got great results and felt a difference. So I knew that it was accurate and I was able, but it just didn't feel like my thing. So I would like find out something and then move on to something else. And that was pretty typical for me, and always has been really in my life, just because of my Gemini energy. Just likes to devour knowledge and information and wisdom. And so that's what I was doing. And I was doing it at home because my Gemini energy is on the home front. So my family members knew that I was experimenting with energy, because all throughout my journey, I would, even though I wasn't in close contact with any of them, when I did see them, I would excitedly want to share what I had been learning and known and understood to be useful and working and accurate, right, as a tool for healing, because I didn't want people to be suffering around me. And you know, I quickly learned that they weren't really like gonna focus on it like I was, right? It wasn't as interesting to them as it was to me, which is fine. But at some point I did get transportation and was being urged and guided back into the real world kind of stuff. And so my mom had this habit of not hiring professionals when she needed work done around the house, but like getting a family member to do it. So my aunt was going to bring some carpet to be laid in the living room, and my mother called us all up to come and help lay the carpet. Which I just have to giggle about it just because it's just funny to me. So I show up, I'm there, and there's also some friends of ours, like some acquaintances that are mostly my sister's friends, but, you know, they're always friendly with me too. And when my sister shows up, and she is stopping in on her way to the hospital because her daughter, who was in dance class in general but had been practicing dance at home, had come down on her toe so hard that the toe was like that purple, red, throbbing, like maybe a bone was broken under it, you know, in there. that kind of situation was going on. And my sister was like just letting us know that she couldn't help and that she had to proceed on to the hospital because, you know, my niece's toe was like, she couldn't put on a shoe. It was swollen. She was on crutches. And so my sister was also concerned because she had let the insurance lapse. And she was in the process of getting it taken care of, but it was some paperwork that needed to be done, and it hadn't been done yet, but now here she was needing the hospital services. So she flippantly says, hey, maybe Auntie Julie can heal your toe. Because my family knows that I'm delving into energy medicine and whatnot. And I said, sure, I'll try. Let's do it. Well, I think one of the key vital points of that day was that right before I sat down to do it, I had a deeper conversation with one of our friends that was there. One of our friends had lost her son. And it was a very, you know, big pain and emotional grief. And at that time, I had not yet healed my empath wound. So I was regularly empathing anyone else's emotional energy very, very easily. And we sat down and talked, and she also had this book where she had people write to her in it. And she had me reading it, and it was just so beautiful. So, and as I was tapped into the energy of her, I all of a sudden start releasing her grief through my own body. I was crying very deeply, and I was feeling very in awe of the beauty that was shown in her journal. One moment. Okay, where was I? Shoot. I was holding it in my mind the whole time, and then, like, laughter comes and just... Okay, so I have this heart-opening moment, right? My heart's really open because of the kindness that I read in the journal and the grief that I've just let out. Like, I mean, I was crying so deeply my body was shaking, right? But it was her grief. I know it was her grief. But you don't empath that from someone else unless you have a matching wound. So I had grief too, but it was like that amplified it enough for me to let go of it, which opened my heart. So the reason why I'm saying open heart is because, like, I believe having an open heart was a very vital part of this process. Okay. So after that, we go into the living room where everybody is. They're talking about how best to do laying the carpet process. And I actually sit on the side of the room. You know, it's a pretty big room. I don't know, like 30 by 30. I don't know. Sit on the side of the room and I say, all right, let's give it a try, to my niece, Amelia. And I sit down. Now, we've already looked at her foot, and now she's got her sock back on, but it's like, just like dark purple, red, throbbing, oof, looks terrible, hurt, painful. So she sits her foot. We all sit on the floor. My sister-in-law actually watched the whole thing. She kind of stood by and just watched. And what I did was I got into my usual meditation that I had been using. Actually, I hadn't been using it yet. I think I developed it in that moment. I connected to the source energy. So when you like pray, you imagine like about 3 feet above you, there's like this, or maybe 300 feet, whatever you do. There's this light, this source light, God, right? It's like I allowed that energy to enter and fill my body through my crown chakra, entered all my limbs and all that, right? So my body was completely filled with light. Then I shot that light outside of the bottom of me and into the center of the earth, where I imagined it wrapping in and holding on into the center of the earth. Then I asked Mother Earth's loving energy to come back up that cord and this energy filled me from the bottom. and filled me completely. Oh, and now I know that these were like little bits and pieces of different meditations I had tried of other people's along the way. So I was just kind of taking bits and bobs and doing the process, right? Because I remembered just now that making this next step was something I learned in a Twin Flames meditation. So then I met those energies at my heart space and made a bubble around my heart. So now I was connected to heaven and earth. And then I expanded that bubble to include, all of me. Now, when I've done this process so many times that I can expand my bubble, just in a few moments, past the constraints of time and space. But back then I did it incrementally. I expanded my bubble until it surpassed the constraints of time and space. So once connected to that space, this is more bits and bobs of other people's things that they were doing had inspired me to do it this way. But I recognize that she has a divine blueprint of her wellness and her wholeness, her highest version of self, outside of time and space. And I brought her energy up to that divine blueprint. And I said, hey, remember your divine blueprint. You are whole and well. And then I used the violet flame energy, which I had already invoked myself to and had been using as a transmuting energy before this time. And I transmuted, I brushed her down, her entire energy, with the violet flame. And then whatever I was kind of transmuting, I pushed into the earth. And I asked Mother Earth to cleanse the energy and return it to us in the form of rainbow love water. So, like, it would go into the earth and then come back down like rain over her, and rainbow-colored rain. So I did this repeatedly over and over again. So I'm holding her up to blueprint. Violet flame transmutation, cleansing, and it's returning. Holding her up to blueprint, and I do this over and over again. Okay? And I'm doing these kind of hand motions, which her foot is just sitting in my lap while I'm doing this. And I'm imagining what I'm doing, right? And I'm basically reminding her energy to return to its wholeness and assisting her energy with the codes it would need to make that happen. Because we're connected to outside time and space, we're dealing on a quantum level, which means the version of us that's outside of this time and space exists, and we are kind of projected into these human bodies, in these vessels, which we get to navigate with, sense with, taste, touch, whatever, which are very nice things to be able to do. Because I popped out of my body and remembered, oh yeah, it's really nice to be in your body because everything's so, sex, that's not something you get to really experience outside of the body, not like you do in a body. Maybe there's a version of it, but then again, maybe you don't need to when you're outside of body because you're always kind of in a blissful state. But it is kind of that moment of building up. I don't have to tell you about how nice an orgasm is, I'm sure. Okay, so this process was nothing orgasmic or anything, but when I was doing it, she kind of giggled and she's like, oh, I feel it tingling. So I continued on. It was under 5 minutes that I was doing this process, and I felt the energy like give way. It would be like if you were like brushing something and then it, like all of a sudden there was no resistance, and it was like, oh, it's, and then I just intuitively was like, oh, it's done. So under 5 minutes, it was done. And so now it's just like me, my niece sitting there. Everyone else in the room was not paying attention to us. And then my sister-in-law standing above us and watching, because we're sitting on the floor. And then I peel her sock off. And I think that we were all pretty fucking shocked, to be honest. Like, I wasn't doing it because I didn't think it wouldn't work. I knew it was very possible. But I just didn't know I was going to actually do it, I did not know that it was a combination of things, right, that allowed this to happen. It was the fact that she was like 10 years old and we had grown up and she trusted me. I was her caretaker. It was the fact that she was a child and she was open to the limitless possibilities, and her life experience hadn't showed her that that was impossible. She trusted her Auntie Julie. It was that I knew it was very possible. I trusted that it was possible because I had already known the magic that was available here, that energy was a thing and all this. I had already been able to dissipate clouds and correspond with insects and animals and all that. So I knew that there was power here, right? Like, and I think also, like, she and I probably had a soul contract for her to allow me to try this and do this on her so that I would be reminded of my magic to such a solidified level, right? Because it's like, oh, it's not just limited to insects and 3D things. Like we can actually work on this other level of our energy bodies. So when I took the sock off, there was just like one pink line that was fading and two pink dots, and it was all fading. And there was no more black and blue, no more of that. It was all gone. And she was still hesitant to walk on it because, you know, she had been in such pain, like literally 5 minutes before. And but within half an hour, she was walking on it, and totally normal. She went to dance class the next day. She never had to go to the hospital. She had healed herself through a quantum, on a quantum level, and she had done that with my assistance because I gave her the codes to do that. And that's something that she was always capable of doing. It was just that I reminded her energy to do it. You know what I mean? And it was possible for her to do it in that moment. She had enough resources. It was the right thing for it to happen, right? Because that in our lives, that experience in our lives served a lot of different purposes for both of us in our own individual ways. And, you know, for her, she knew that was possible. She had gone on to help her pets later on in different ways. And my sister-in-law even was affected because she witnessed it. And so, you know, she knew it was possible. And I've never actually had a conversation with her about that beyond like, wow, that was pretty amazing. But, you know, she has her own spiritual journey, and I'm sure in whatever way was pertinent for her, it is, you know, whatever, it was an experience she had. So for me, what it brought up was like this want to do that. Like, oh, well, if this is possible, then I just want to do this for people, right? Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Be in the role of like healer, where you just like in under 5 minutes alleviate people from their pain. Yeah, I wanted to do that. And my path did not take me down a road that allowed that at that time. And there's a few different reasons, and it actually still helped me to understand where I was at, given the circumstances I was in. So there I was with this magic ability, and I had my energy healing business up and running already at that point. It was I had a website going, right? I was trying to do this for business. And I said to my sister, you know, because my sister, even though she didn't sit and watch it, she knew what her daughter's toe was like before, and she knew after. So she knew what had happened. And I asked her, would you do a testimonial for my website? And my sister said no, because she didn't want people to think she was crazy. And for me at that time, that was very painful. And maybe it is still a bit of painful. Maybe I do need to work through that a little bit more. And, you know, it's not wrong that she had that thought or that worry. You know, it's not wrong that she didn't choose to support me. But there's still a part of me that feels hurt that she didn't, you know? So both things are true. She has the right to not want to put herself in that position, which she didn't feel capable of handling. And also, I also get to feel hurt that my, you know, family member couldn't support me. But if you know me, you know that I'm allowing myself to feel hurt so that I can move through it. And then I can, know that I'm not the victim to it, that it just is, and that I'm a human being who gets to feel things in response to experiences I have, just like everyone else. So I was really hurt by that, and I just kind of like had to move through a bunch of other parts of me that were hurt, that I've already processed and been present with. And then right before this time, the reason that I had got transportation again was because I ended up reconciling with my boyfriend at that time. It had been a relationship where, we had split up, and I really felt like I was meant to be with him. So when he came back around, I took him back and was happy to, try again with him, because if he was to follow the path that I was discovering, like, he could overcome anything. Like, there's, like, nothing's a problem. It's like all you have to do is want to grow and learn and be your best version, and then we'll get along just fine. Right? And it wasn't like I wanted him to be doing impossible things. It was just like, being a decent person, not lying and blah, blah, blah. Anyway. So he had been back in my life, and he had aches and pains. So, of course, with my new level of understanding of what I was capable of course, I went to work on assisting him to heal his body. And that was something I was very willing to do, and that I spent hours of my life. But the difference that I later found out was with him, he was sort of invested in an agenda that I was not aware of. And that agenda was keeping me small, keeping me insecure, keeping me in the role that I was in so that I would accept the bullshit behavior from him, which was that he was never going to commit to me. He was just going to keep saying that we were meant to be together while he kept me on as a side chick, basically. Kept me isolated, kept me away from other people, continued to socialize without me oftentimes, and just giving the bare minimum to our relationship. A lot of lip service and blah, blah, blah. So I didn't know that at the time. I believed his lip service. I thought he was invested in the relationship, and I thought it was well worth my time to invest hours of my life doing healing measures on him. But if you remember, I was just starting to get back into society. I hadn't really gotten back yet. I was pretty isolated in my life, so he was kind of the only one in my life that I could physically try this out on. So I went from this amazing experience with my niece to trying it out on this person who was narcissistically coping and who was not invested in me having any credit for assisting him to do anything. He really wanted me to feel inferior and make me doubt myself. So if somebody doesn't believe in it or want it, it will not work on them. So that happened. And it was very discouraging for me because I didn't yet understand that he had a different agenda. I didn't yet let myself see that, what kind of dynamic it really was. But so for a time, all I knew was, okay, I could do this amazing thing, but not always. I was like, well, what good is it? And like went back to spirit, like, well, what good is this? Why am I doing, And then from there, life, unraveling my own programs, my shadows, discovering why I would be in a relationship like that, blah, 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 blah. Sent back into society in the form of like being sent to this certain location in town, a bar, where a friend of mine was bartending, and then like this is my reintroduction to the underworld and where I'm going to be faced with all my shadows. And so even more of my confidence kind of got shaken through my experience of that. Because when I was isolated and on my own and connected to God, I knew very well who I was, what I was capable of, and how lovable I was. But as I was faced with the people who were poking my shadows, which was all the kind of programming from my childhood, it was like, keeping me very busy with things to heal. And that healing process is the process you have seen me talk about in many, many, many videos, almost every video, where I teach you how to kind of clear up the misunderstandings that keep us in programmed ways of response and things like that. Okay. So then, let's see. Time goes on. I end up leaving that relationship, blah, blah, blah. My son had been diagnosed with a congenital kidney defect. So congenital, it means that he was born with it. He had already had a stent put in, and that means like a little place holder in the tube that would keep it open. Because it had, like, the pinch in it had been causing him issues. And so fast forward a couple years, and that stent was no longer serving its purpose, and he was in pain again. And at the time, I was just happened to be looking at his astrology chart and also discovering certain asteroids, and they were active in his chart, and it got me really concerned about what they meant and what that meant for his condition. And so I was really paying attention. And now, over the years, of course, like I said, I had always offered to do healing energy on him. And he had always been really annoyed with it and just been like, nah, no ma, no thanks. But about a week before this time, something in me cleared, and I saw myself from outside of myself when it came to asking him to help him heal. And I just realized how wrong it was of me to do that all the time. And I had gone to him and I just said, look, I'm really sorry that I keep asking you that. I see that it's wrong of me, and I think it just came from, like, this part of me who just wanted to, like, be your mother and take care of you and love you, but I forgot that like, you are an adult and that I should be respecting your boundary, and I really didn't mean to violate your boundary that way so many times. And I cried when I said it, and he just really paid attention, and he was like, it's okay, Ma. So we move on, and I feel a lot better because now I know I'm not going to be bugging my family members anymore, because I just saw it from outside of myself, and it was like, oh, I see why I don't need to do that. But then about a week after that experience, my son got a toothache on top of his kidney pain. And so he said, hey Ma, I think that I could probably use some of that energy healing if you're still into it. Yeah, I am. So we sit in the living room as a family where we're all watching a television show, and I'm across the room from him, and I connect to his energy, and I start doing that same method that I described. And first I clear the pain from the tooth. I tell him what side it's on. He says yes. I said, did it just move to this side, to right here? And he said yes, and I cleared that too. So he knew I was connected to his energy and feeling into his body. And then I cleared worked on the kidney thing for about an hour. And by the end, I was like exhausted, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go home. But if it's okay with you, I'll do some more over the next couple days. So when we were doing this all, he had just had an MRI earlier in the day. But he was having that MRI because he had surgery scheduled in 3 days. So that night I went home. He said, sure, I could do distance healing on him on the next couple days. So the next morning I woke up and I was unable to move because my kidneys were in so much pain that I couldn't. And what happened was I had actually pretty much taken on his illness. And so then I had to clear it from myself. And I did. Within minutes, I was okay again. But that was a real effing pain, and I was really holy crap, And so if you think about that, I was being shown that there is other steps, like it will affect me and use my resources if I don't do it the right way, you know what I mean? So cleared it in myself. Those days I was so exhausted from doing it the first day, and maybe also had probably depleted a lot of my resources because I did it for an hour. And the next couple days I could only do it for 15 minutes one night and then 20 minutes the next night. Now, during the process of the first hour that I did it, I connected to his soul. And I was so scared of losing him in the surgery because of what I saw in the astrology that I was saying things like don't take him, like take me instead. And his soul was like, we can both live. And then his soul told me that this illness was his only excuse for resting. So if his illness, if his pain was not there, he wouldn't rest, and he needed to rest. And I was like, oh. So I said to him, hey, if we do this, like, you're going to have to rest even if you feel better. And he said, okay. So I didn't know it, but those 2 following days before surgery, he was up and at 'em way more than he had been in months. And I think the other people in the household noticed that he was feeling a lot better. And then we go to surgery, and I went too. And at that hospital, interestingly enough, they do Reiki. And they offer it as a post-surgery option. But they didn't ask if he had had any energy medicine in the pre-op questions, which they do before surgery. And if they had asked, I think we would have remembered to tell them, but we didn't. So now he's going into surgery. We're waiting. We are in the waiting room, and the surgeon comes out afterwards. And the surgeon says to me and his girlfriend, so I went in there, and I didn't know why I was in there. There was no pinched tube. He said, but I knew that he was hurting, and I had seen the MRI before, so I didn't want to do nothing. He said, so I found a small tube, and I put a balloon in it. And it's going to extend his recovery period. But I didn't know what else to do. Well, he didn't know that I had done energy medicine with my son before the surgery. He didn't know that the reason why he couldn't see the issue was because it had been rectified and it was healed. But because of that, he put a balloon in another tube, and that caused my son to have to rest a lot longer than he would have normally if he had the original surgery they planned. So it actually worked out in his favor. And I would have never known that it worked had he not had surgery and had the surgeon not come out and said that. So again, I was shown, like, this really works. Hey, this really works. Like, oh, cool. But by then I was just kind of like, what? I'm surrounded by my family members who don't, like, they could see it happen and they still can't let it into their reality. And what I have learned is that the physical issues, are a manifestation of unprocessed emotions. And when there are unprocessed emotions, it will eventually manifest into a physical ailment. So if we do this quantum healing on the physical ailment and the emotional issue is never resolved, that is going to recreate the physical ailment. And so if quantum healing is done and the emotions are not dealt with, it's going to just go back to another issue physically. So in that way, it's like, well, yeah, we could use this as a life-saving device, I guess, to prolong an issue. But like, to give someone more time to deal with an emotional issue. But like, if they don't deal with it, it's just going to remanifest, right? So good to know. And that is what happened with my son. And that's why he kind of, even at this point, I don't think he acknowledges what actually happened in that way, because he kind of looks at it like, well, it came back, so whatever you did doesn't matter. And I get that view, and that's fine. Like, if it's not within his prerogative to take the understanding of quantum healing into his reality, that's just not meant to be at this time, and that's fine with me. But cool on my behalf. Like, I felt like good enough for me because like I'm pretty excited about knowing it works and stuff. All right, so another time, so after that, it was just kind of like same for me. Like, I kind of felt like he does about it. Like, well, who cares if it's you know, it's like, when am I going to use this? I don't know. I'm not around any people that I could really use it for, and what would be the point if they don't deal with their emotional issue? It's like, but I definitely can get rid of my own pains, my own toothaches, my own, aches, pains, anything like that arises. I'm not suffering from anything like that, because even if I did, and I maybe have a couple times, just used it on myself and alleviated it. So it's nice, it's helpful, and also it's not everything. Also, it's like miracles are great. Like, you would look at this as a miracle, but it's really quantum physics. And miracles are great, but like also there's other stuff here and there's other things going on, right? Like, we don't, like, everything's a miracle. It's a miracle that we're alive. It's a miracle that I had a son. It's a miracle, Okay, so then I was living in a condo later, after I moved. Then the neighbors, okay, so there's one other set of people who lived in the complex in a different building full-time. I lived there full-time, and I was the only one in my building, and they were the only ones full-time in their building. So it was kind of cool because we had a lot of the place to ourselves. But these neighbors knock on my door one day because the dog of one of the people who owned the condo above them had jumped out the second-story window and really destroyed himself. And he had blood and stuff on, and messed up his face, and then also, like, he was like, seemed like he was going to give up on breathing and not really, like, doing very well, like body shaking and struggling for breath. And it was, and they were actually on their way out. They had to leave, so they had already given this dog like a cool towel because it was very hot that day, and some water. And then they were knocking on my door because they had to leave. They were like, I don't know what they were doing, but they had to leave. And they wondered if I could, like, stay with the dog. And I said, sure, can you call they didn't know how to get in touch with the owners or anything. And I was like, well, yes, I'll stay with the dog, but can you call the building maintenance people and see if they can get in touch with whoever's in that apartment? And so luckily they did do that, but it was a while that I was with this dog. And when I first walked into the dog's field, I felt so much pain. It was overwhelming and made me cry, the amount of pain that dog was in. And I started doing the energy medicine. And and they go, and I don't know what's going to happen with them. I don't know if they're going to get in touch with anybody. I just know here I am with this dog all alone in the middle of, like, nowhere. And so I start doing the energy medicine, and I ease it up enough that I can be in the dog's presence without being uncomfortable myself. But for me, this experience touched on the fact that when I was a child, had a pet that was run over by a car, and I was a witness to the pet after the fact, and the pet was very uncomfortable and in a lot of pain, and I still had trauma that was unprocessed from childhood, from age 5. So this experience, being exposed to this dog in this predicament, was reactivating my own trauma. So when I was when I was reminding that dog about the codes that they need to heal, I was healing myself too, because I was processing both of our traumas, right? So that's an interesting fact about this. So it's kind of like God kept putting me in situations where it served a bigger purpose than just what it was. It wasn't like some, be a guru, sit at the end of a long line of people and just, like, touch heal them. Like, that wasn't ever going to be my role. God was, I say God, but universe, whatever the plan was utilizing me in ways that it was also a benefit to me in some way, because it taught me something, So in this case, it was that. So at some point, the dog's like stopped breathing. And so I tap into the dog's soul and I say, hey, like, should we keep doing this? Is this dog going to make it? Like, is it worth doing this? And then it's like, yes, keep doing it. And so I did. And it was like an hour I was with the dog. Maybe I already said that. But like throughout the time, like I got the dog to like even out its breathing, to be calm, to be present with me, where it didn't give up on its breathing, and like just comfortable enough that it could not be passing out from the pain and stuff anymore. So that's what I did for that dog, and eventually the owners did come, and they scooped up the dog and put him in the back of their car, their SUV, to take him to the vet. And when the dog was put in the back, I was just like standing there with the owner, just explaining what had transpired and what I knew of the experience. And the dog just like put his paw out to me, just so as to say like thank you, or I see you, I recognize you, I appreciate you. It was just nice, So then it was 3 months later, I hadn't heard anything or known anything about the dog, and then I finally ran into those people. And they said that the vet said that he had pulled all his ligaments. And they do normally put dogs down for that, and some dogs never really fully recover. But that their dog had actually just started running again 3 months later. So it was nice to get that update, that the dog had fully recovered, and it was worthwhile to do that for that dog. And it was also like that dog was helping me to release my karma, because I still had that unprocessed wound in me. And it didn't just affect me in that there was an unprocessed wound in me. It affected me because my whole life up to that point, I had never let myself get close to pets again. I didn't pet dogs. I didn't talk to them. I didn't. My animal interactions had been with a rabbit, and it was a wild rabbit. So, a wild rabbit is different than a pet dog or cat, So it was like I had a guard up against getting close to a pet again. Now I don't want pets like today, and like I'm not necessarily needing a pet. Like I like that the neighbor's dog comes over and says hi to me. I give him water. We make eye contact. We talk, like I love that my son has a cat and his name is Rick. And I talk to him, and I love that my sister's house is full of pets. And I talk to them. I like animals. I think they're beautiful souls and stuff like that, but I'm not like longing for a pet for myself or anything like that. So it's it's okay that I didn't have a pet all these years, but like also it's interesting that it was because of that wound that I had, and it was beautiful that I got to heal through the experience of assisting someone else to heal. And that's kind of been the process all along, right? Through each of these instances, there was something for me to find out and then heal from. Like the fact that my sister or family members weren't going to support me or recognize me. I had to heal from that. The fact that, I had a boyfriend who wasn't going to support me or recognize me. I had to heal from that. The fact that I had a son who wasn't gonna recognize me. I had to heal from that and be okay with that. And then the fact that I had an unprocessed wound from age 5 where I witnessed my cat Smokey die, I had to heal from that. So it's like a beautiful divine orchestration. But what it comes down to is that quantum healing exists. We can affect the energy outside of space and time and have it correspond to what we experience inside of space and time. And I think, for different reasons, for different people, this would be important for different reasons, I think, because I know that there are touch healers. I know that there are people who are doing that. And I think that's cool. But I also see how, if that was just going to be the way it was, how would anyone evolve their soul or progress, or who's going to transmute the karmas? So that's where I'm at with that. Let me just confirm this plans. Okay. So now I want to look at the cards that I pulled. I asked to be shown anything that needed to be discussed alongside these things. Let's see. Sneaky. Tricky, secretive, stealthy. Impatient. Restless, impetuous, envy. What's that? Sorry, I don't know why it's so funny to me that my eyes don't see clearly, but it just is. Anxious, restless, impetuous. So, I think what the point is on this is these are the things that could impede the process. If you have somebody who's got another motive, right? Like my ex, I said that he didn't really want me to be successful in healing him. He had another motive. So being impatient as well, right? Because you saw my examples ranged from it took 5 minutes to I did it for an hour or, another hour. It's like the time it takes is the time it takes. Shiny, reflective, gleaming, polished. So you also saw me talk about how, I wanted to just sit there on a little throne and just do these instant healings for people after that, right? But that is so surface level. That's like I wanted to wear the image of being that healer. This is early on at the time. Now I respect the process that actually was, but I think it's important, and it's pointing out that it is important to understand that this isn't just some badge of honor you sit and wear, because listen, everybody has the access to do this. It's just that if you were to want that, then that shows you something about yourself. And that's okay too. It's not wrong. It's understandable, right? Cool, not hot, chilled. Interesting. I think you really should be comfortable when you're doing something like this. Lovable, adorable, enchanting. Know your ability to love. This is a loving process, right? It's like a respectful process of the universe and all that is. Wonderful, great, excellent. And I don't think it's a process that needs to be recognized for its greatness and the wonder of it. But it just is. Magical. Magical, mysterious, delightful. And I think you could classify it as magic, but it's not, right? And I've heard some quote one time about magic being just science that we don't understand yet. And I think that's definitely what this is. It's quantum physics is what's above physics. Physics as we understand it, there's something above that. And these correspond to laws of the universe. And this corresponds to the fact that we are here in human bodies having a human experience, but that we are part of eternal energy. Exciting. Yeah. It was definitely exciting. It was the most exciting thing that had happened to me in a while. Thank you for your patience. Okay, water skiing. Keep your legs straight. So, when you're water skiing, you've got to have a certain level of confidence. And that's something that was very important to this. And I think, like, everything that I had learned about myself and the universe, the laws of the universe, my whole connection, and my willingness to trust God and trust myself, really. I had already experimented enough to prove to myself that it was possible. I operated with blind faith for a period of time and saw the truth of things. And things are actually harder to do once you lose blind faith. If you lose faith, now you've lost access. Because faith is part of this. It doesn't have to be blind faith. It's just that I'm saying, like, in the beginning, that's what I had. Because it had been shown to me so many times that it was possible that I believed it. That's why I did it. So being confident that it would be possible is a definite part of the equation, the ingredients. It says a romantic dance. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, dip. And do you see how that's talking about the steps that I took? I took 3 steps when I said the process. I connected to their divine blueprint. I alchemized with the violet flame, and I had it returned to them through Mother Earth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And see how it repeated? So this is kind of pointing out that that's an important process of that. It's like I commanded the energy to do that thing through not only just repeating it, but like, because remember, repetition is a program, but also, just through the repetition. I lost my thought there. Frenemies. Sometimes it takes a civil war to see who your real friends and enemies are. Oh, isn't that true? Situations sometimes show you, right? Who are your real friends? Who would support you? Who would risk being thought of as crazy just to show their support to you? Because personally, I get why someone wouldn't want to be thought of as crazy, especially if they were in a fragile situation where they didn't think they could handle that kind of fallout for their reputation. But personally, I don't give a F if someone thinks I'm crazy. If I know what I know, and I would like friends like that. But you do find out who your friends are when things like this come up. That's okay. Also, people change. Let's leave room for them to grow and learn, right? Because sometimes how I learn who I want to be is by realizing who I don't want to be. And by realizing how I fucked up. And that's okay. I'm still lovable. I'm allowed to. I'm pretty sure it's like part of being human. A magic mirror. Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest one of them all? And so this is kind of like, it's not something that's done with hierarchy in mind, Like, it's just so surfacey to try to make it that, It's just not what this is about. And if you approached it from that level, you're probably just going to be shown lessons. I don't know what would happen, but a dark, powerful sorceress, this mistress of all evil, can transform herself into a huge black and purple dragon. This method can't be used for detriment to others. Like, I'm bringing others up to their highest wholeness. That's who they are naturally, right? I'm not asking them to be someone else, or I'm not like putting a spell on them to like hinder them in any way. Like, this is totally different. This isn't dark magic. All this is me reminding them that if they'd like, they can just use their healing codes to regenerate themselves. That's all. And why am I the one able to do that? Because I know that that's possible. And anyone else who knows it's possible could do it, or remind someone else to do it too. Eyes, the better to see you with. It's funny that I'm putting my glasses on to read these, and that it's saying this, and I think it's like, it's time, it's okay for me to be seen in this light, even if people think I'm crazy. A stampede, a sudden rush of frightened animals. Oh my gosh, see? Imagine if it got out. Imagine if my sister did a testimonial, and then it, like, word spread that I was doing this, and then, like, a bunch of scared people ran towards me wanting to be desperately healed, and who would do anything, including hold me at gunpoint to force me to heal their family member or something like that, right? Oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad I was spared something like that, right? Like, it's just kind of, to me, it's giving me the vision of, like, it's all in divine orchestration. Like, sometimes rejection is protection. Absolutely. That's nice. Because what would I have done, right? If a bunch of people rushed towards me, wanted me to perform that for them, and some so desperate that they would be willing to, like, try to force me into it, I would have had to fight them. I would have had to run. Yeah. Yikes. Whew. I mean, thinking about it that way, I'm like, thank you, sister. Thank you. Okay. Rapunzel. A spirited young woman with 70 feet of magical blonde hair. She escapes from her tower to discover who she really is. Aww. I think if something like there was an ailment that was holding someone back and making it impossible for them to continue on their journey or to get a leg up, out of a tough situation, I think those are the appropriate situations where we those of us who could do this kind of thing would be called to and invited to do so. It's like, if it would be helping somebody get unstuck so that they could proceed and maybe, like, do the cleanup of whatever was having them stuck from outside of being stuck. You know what I mean? How do you stop Rhino from charging? Take away his credit cards. Like, I'm being like brought to, like, street cred. Take away his cred. And it's like, how do you stop Rhino from charging? How do I stop that slew of people coming to, request that I heal their loved ones? You take away my street cred. So wherever my reputation has been labeled as she's crazy, she's trying to start a cult, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's delusional. I mean, I kind of, like, I guess part of it doesn't bother me because, like, if my reputation is that, then it's probably some sort of protection. Because maybe those people would be bypassing certain lessons that they had to learn themselves. And I did eventually learn that I didn't want to, take away someone's lessons. I didn't want to make life harder for somebody who needed the indicator that they had in a physical ailment in order to address an issue. You know what I mean? So I think it's okay to use these things when and where appropriate, but I also think it's not like something to build my image on. It's not something to think I'm better than or make a business out of necessarily, or, it's just like, it'd be awful nice if we all knew our ability to tap into the quantum field and to ask for assistance in that way, and to understand that we will get it. We will get it if we ask. Ask and you shall receive. So those are my stories about my experience with quantum healing. I did afterwards run into a book called Quantum Touch. And when I started reading that book, which I think I have all 3 books, because there's like a series of 3 on my Kindle, and maybe they're like a few pages read out of each. And this is now like, 6 years ago or something I got it. But when I read parts of that book, I realized, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing quantum healing. So there are books out there, and you might want to look at Quantum Touch and just whatever information is relevant to you if you're researching this topic. I mean, it's absolutely possible, and also there's a lot of other factors to it. And I think it's valuable because one thing is it puts the responsibility back in our own hands, right? Like, we're not going to a doctor, not because I say doctors are bad or don't have anything good to offer, but we're not like running to a doctor to look for the answers to, heal us and solve everything. They don't always know. And especially if they're not aware of this premise that exists on Earth, that we are always just displaying a manifestation of our own energy. And that's why the quantum healing works, is because we're going into our blueprint of our energy and kind of reminding our body, like, hey, remember, we are this. This is our potential. Would you like to bring yourself to the potential? And if it doesn't serve a person to be at that potential at that time, then that's just not going to work. They might not have the resources, or divine intervention will happen, or they'll, whatever. Like, it's okay. Whatever happens, but like, I feel like knowing this is a possibility kind of changes things, because it does allow us to take that responsibility back into ourselves. Yeah. So if you've ever heard the story about me having autoimmune hepatitis and my liver failing, and the doctor telling me that I needed to be put on a waiting list for a liver transplant, and me healing that in myself, and me doing that by rejecting what the doctor was telling me to do, which is take steroids and chemo drugs, and by rejecting the contradicting information that another doctor told me to do when I got symptoms from those drugs. And just like, I had to walk away from the system of doctors that were not going to save my life because they didn't know how. And taking my healing into my own hands was one of the best things I've done. I haven't been to a doctor in years. I did go back to the doctor at some point to show them that I had healed my autoimmune hepatitis. And you know what they said to me? Oh, it'll come back. I told them what I had done to heal it, and that's what they took from it. Because if they had taken into the truth, right, that I had healed, which all the tests confirmed, by the way, then they would have to question the premise of what they were doing, which they were not prepared to do. I get it. Sometimes when we are presenting information that crumbles the foundation of somebody's reality, they will reject it. It's fine. It's not personal, right? It's like, this is my perspective. This is all I have. If it's not valuable to you, then don't use it. If it is, great. And I think that's like this talk show that I want to spend some time doing as a hobby is about presenting that, like, that we each have our own perspective, and like, the more accepting we can be of each other's perspectives and interested in understanding each other's perspectives, the bigger chance we have of networking to the degree that we actually get some stuff done, right? So yeah, what do you think? Where are you in the stage of digesting this information? Is it new to you? Are you researching it? Have you had experience? Are you interested? Are you going to experiment? Let me know.